This video was sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Believe it or not, this is the 389th MTG Top 10 I've done, and I've been doing these since February of 2016. Because I've made so many videos over a long span of time, older lists are often in need of an update, and that's what we're doing today with a 2021 update to the MTG Top 10 on Reach. Reach is a keyword ability that enables a creature to block flyers, and flavor-wise it is often given to creatures who can't fly, but possess the ability to interfere with creatures who can. Most frequently, archers and spiders are given Reach, but it does appear on all kinds of creatures, as we'll see. It shows up the most in green, but has appeared on cards of all colors at this point. The ability was around from the game's beginning, appearing on Alpha's Giant Spider, but it wasn't officially turned into a keyword until 14 years later in 2007's Future Sight. Since then, it's been what's called an evergreen keyword, which means we see it at least a few times in every single set. That original MTG Top 10 on Reach came out more than 4 years ago, on July 21st of 2017, and as you can imagine, there's been a ton of turnover on the list over the last 4 years. As we'll see, there are 5 newcomers in this MTG Top 10, and there's only one card on the list in the exact same spot it was in back in 2017. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have Reach or be able to grant Reach to creatures. In all, there are 270 cards that meet that requirement, and in this video, we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. We're also going to take a brief look at each of the 5 cards that have fallen off the list since 2017. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Fest or Grand Prix is worth 1 point. Now, let's take a look at the 5 Reach cards that fell off of this list. First, there's ULVENWALD HYDRA, who was number 10 on the list last time. At worst, this gives you a 6-mana 7/7 with Reach, which isn't terrible, but would probably not be enough for it to see play if that's all it did. Luckily for the Hydra, it also searches your library for a land, and it can be any land, not just basic ones, and puts them into play. This means it can help you fix your mana in a multicolored deck, but it can also search up powerful non-basics. It hasn't gained a single point since 2017. A score of 5 was good enough for the Hydra to be number 10 last time, but this time around, the number 10 card on the list has 20 points, so it isn't even close. Next, there's THORNWEALD Archer, who came in at number 10 last time. The Archer packs 2 nice keyword abilities on a 2-mana 2/1 body, and the combination of Death Touch and Reach means it can take down even the biggest flyers. It was mostly a sideboard card while it was in Standard, one that could be brought in against problem flyers. It hasn't gained any points though since 2007. Jungle Weaver is another card that fell off of the list. It came in at number 8 last time. It actually has the same score as the Archer, but goes to the higher spot by virtue of a higher average finish. Jungle Weaver gained all of its points in Extended and Modern Living Index, which load up on cycling creatures before casting Living End, at which point all those cycled creatures get reanimated. Unfortunately for the Jungle Weaver, lots of better cycling creatures have been printed in recent years, and it doesn't have any points since 2016. Thar the Unbowed is also no longer on this list. He came in at number 7 last time. Of all the cards to fall off of it, he is the only one that has actually gained points since the last list in 2017, and it is also now the closest of these 5 cards to the list. Thar gives you a big body with Vigilance and Reach, and he also harshly punishes players for casting non-creature spells. He's gained points in both Standard and Modern, but hasn't gained any since the end of 2017. It has a better chance than the other cards that fell off of the list of making the list again someday. And the last of the cards to fall off of the 2021 version of this list is Weaver of Lightning. This Reach creature comes with the ability to ping other creatures when you cast spells, and it was particularly well suited to the Standard of the time. It could block almost all the flyers people played, and could even pick off smaller creatures in the meantime. It was a common sideboard card in red decks while it was in Standard, however it doesn't have any points since 2017 and is a full 9 points behind the number 10 card on this list. Alright, let's move now to the newly updated MTG Top 10 on Reach. At number 10 it is ATARKA'S command, so it hasn't actually gained any points since 2017, but my methodology has changed some in the last 4 years. Back when I made the 2017 video, I only included creatures with Reach. These days, when I do a video on most topics, whether it's a keyword ability or a creature type, I also include spells that grant that keyword ability or make that creature token, So that's how ATARKA'S command went from being unrated in the 2017 video to being the number 10 card in the 2021 video without actually gaining any points. Anyway, let's talk about the command. Like other commands, it has 4 options, and you get to choose 2 of them. One of ATARKA'S command's options is giving your whole board +1/+1 and reach, and obviously that's what gets it on this list. That is particularly potent when you combine it with the 3 damage to an opponent option, as you can often end up spending only 2 mana to do like 10 plus extra damage. Adding reach to the mix also means you can use it defensively to ambush a problematic flyer. ATARKA'S command was played in standard aggro decks, and it gained most of its points in ATARKA Red, a deck that gets the ATARKA in its name from ATARKA'S command. It also has been utilized in aggro decks in Modern, where burn decks and red aggro decks used to splash green so that they could play ATARKA'S command. ATARKA'S command has fallen out of vogue in Modern, though, and it doesn't have any points since 2017. There are also some cards that are just a few points behind it, like Shifting Ceratops and Crawl Harpooner, so if I update this list in the future, there's a good chance the command won't make it. At number 9, it is Robber of the Rich, a card that didn't even exist back in 2017. It has the same overall score as ATARKA'S command, but a higher average finish, so I gave it the higher slot. The Robber has a whole lot of text for a 2-drop. It of course has reach, but it also has haste and the ability to effectively allow its controller to draw cards, provided the opponent has more cards than the player who controls the Robber. And if you're a red aggro deck, that's just going to be the case a lot of the time. Unsurprisingly, the Robber has been played in red aggro decks in both Standard and Pioneer. It is about to rotate out of Standard, but has a reasonable shot at continuing to gain points in the future. It doesn't have any points in Historic yet, for example, but it is being played there, and it's probably only a matter of time before that happens. At number 8, it is Arboreal Grazer, another card that didn't exist back in 2017. This reach creature doesn't have any power, so it isn't actually able to take down flyers, but it also lets you play an extra land, and doing that on turn 1 to play a 3-drop on turn 2 is pretty nice. The Grazer's 0/3 body does do a reasonable job of blocking early creatures, whether they have flying or not, and that's nice when it's also accelerating your mana. Ramp decks were particularly potent in Standard for a while, making the Grazer a pretty heavily played card in 2019. The Grazer has also been featured in ramp decks in Modern and Pioneer, and it has a reasonable shot at continuing to gain points in the future. At number 7, it is Arbor Colossus, the first card we've seen that made the list in 2017, but managed to hold on to a spot. However, it has plummeted in the rankings, dropping from number 4 to number 7 as a result of not gaining any additional points since 2017. This giant really hates flyers. He not only brings an impressive 5-mana 6/6 reach body to the table, he also has a powerful monstrosity ability that allows it to get larger and destroy a flyer on the spot. He saw both main deck and sideboard play while in Standard, where he was pretty well positioned as a result of there being some pretty powerful and heavily played flyers in the format, like Stormbreath Dragon. The Colossus was mostly played in green Devotion decks, where it could quickly be ramped into, and it was also nice because it gave you 3 green Devotion. The Colossus rotated out of Standard in 2015, and it hasn't gained any points since then, and if we check back on this list in another 4 years, I'd bet he'd no longer be on it. At number 6, it is STONECOIL Serpent, another newcomer to the list that didn't even exist back in 2017. The Serpent is an X-costed creature, which means it scales all game long. There's a lot of value in the fact that it can both be a nice 2-drop that helps you curve out early, or, in the late game, it can be a large creature who helps you finish the game. In addition to coming with reach, it also has trample and protection from multicolored, which is some pretty awesome additional upside, and probably more significant than reach is. The Serpent has been good enough that it's already found play in multiple formats, such as Standard, Pioneer, and Vintage. In Standard, it has mostly been featured in aggro decks, while in Pioneer, it's been played in aggro decks, as well as artifact-centric decks like in Soul Artifact, and ramp decks like Devotion to Green, and in Vintage it's played in mud decks made up pretty much entirely of artifacts and ways to produce a ton of mana to cast them, and you can see how nicely the Serpent can fit in there. Those decks can make the Serpent a massive creature on turn 1. Given its already considerable multi-format success, the Serpent is very likely to continue to gain points going forward, and it has a very real shot at reaching the higher spots on this list in the future. At number 5, it is Stirring Wildwood, a creature land that has reach. It has gained only a single point since the last list and has fallen 2 spots to number 5. Creature lands tend to be pretty good. They produce mana for you in the early going like any other land, and then in the mid to the late game, they remain very relevant cards. And it's nice having something that can be a creature that dodges board sweepers and other sorcery speed removal. The ability to become a 3/4 with reach is pretty nice and makes it a good attacker, but it also isn't a bad surprise blocker. Reach has gotta be the keyword ability people overlook the most. We've all attacked into a creature with reach when we shouldn't have, and we've all been happy when someone attacked us without realizing we had a creature with reach. Putting it on a creature land is even sneakier. You can really surprise someone sometimes by making the WILDWOOD block their flyer. It doesn't have any points since 2018, but as a creature land that produces 2 colors of mana, it's hard to ever count it out entirely. At number 4 is Elder Gargaroth, another newcomer on the list that didn't even exist in 2017, and the highest newcomer on this list. Elder Gargaroth brings a ton of value to the table. A 5-mana 6/6 with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample is already pretty sweet, but then anytime he attacks or blocks, you get a choice between 3 pretty powerful options. Drawing a card or making the beast are the more powerful options most of the time, but sometimes you're low on life, and that 3 life can help you stabilize. Combining Vigilance and Reach with the modal ability is great too, because it means that the Gargaroth can both attack and block during most turn cycles, which also means you get 2 triggers. If the Gargaroth isn't removed right away, it's going to give its controller at least 1 trigger, and that's a pretty nice 2-for-1. If he gets more than a single trigger, he tends to take over the game entirely. He's already enjoyed significant multi-format success, gaining points in Standard, Historic, Pioneer, and Modern. In Standard, it has enjoyed the most success as a sideboard card, as the Gargaroth pretty effectively shuts down aggro decks, though it is featured in the main deck of Yorion Ultimatum in both Historic and Standard, and in Pioneer and Modern, it's been featured in ramp decks as a creature to ramp into early. It's very likely to gain more points going forward. At number 3, it is CLOUDTHRESHER, which sat at the top of the list in 2017, but has plummeted 2 spots as a result of not gaining a single point since that list. CLOUDTHRESHER is another reach creature that really hates flyers. This 6-mana 7/7 has flash, making it pretty capable of ambush blocking a flyer, and in addition to that, it also does 2 damage to all flyers and each player when it enters the battlefield. So, if your deck is built around going wide with small flyers, CLOUDTHRESHER will just destroy you. It also comes with Evoke, which means you can cast it for the 2 damage to all flyers effect, and sometimes you'll want to. CLOUDTHRESHER gained so many points as a result of the metagame in Block and Standard, which was pretty much dominated by fairy decks. Most fairies are 2/2 or smaller, so CLOUDTHRESHER was important tech against them, as it often operated as a one-sided wrath. He was featured in the sideboard of lots of green decks, and was also played significantly in the main deck of Ramp. CLOUDTHRESHER is unlikely to gain more points in the future, but it has a high enough point total that it will probably manage to stick around on this list for a long time, all thanks to killing a lot of fairies between 2007 and 2009. At number 2, it is Ishkana, Graf's Widow. She actually stayed in the same spot on the list, the only card that's true of. She has done enough since 2017 to pass CLOUDTHRESHER, which was then the number 1 card on the list, but obviously, another card managed to pass Ishkana. On her own, Ishkana is not a very impressive card. A 5-mana 3/5 with Reach and an expensive Spider payoff is not very good. However, if you can get Delirium going, she adds a ton to the board for a very efficient cost. She becomes a 5-mana 3/5 that also gives you 3 1/2s with Reach that synergize with her activated ability. That is a heck of a deal, and also the kind of thing that aggro decks will have basically no chance of punching through. Ishkana was played pretty heavily in Standard, and most decks that could get Delirium going easily. This included Sultai and Golgari Delirium decks, but also less Delirium-focused decks like Golgari Constrictor, the various Energy decks, and T-Merge. Sultai Delirium decks are also a thing in Pioneer, and that's good news for Ishkana going forward. And at number 1, it is Worldbreaker, who moved way up from its number 5 spot on the list in 2017. Worldbreaker is a huge creature with reach, capable of blocking the vast majority of flyers in the game, and he also comes with a powerful cast trigger that lets you exile an artifact, enchantment, or land. Worldbreaker also has some resilience, as it can keep coming back from the graveyard if you have the resources. While in Standard, he was played in ramp decks that could accelerate into Worldbreaker on turn 5. In Modern, Worldbreaker was featured in some versions of the busted Eldrazi Winter deck, which existed while Eye of Ugin was legal in the format. The Worldbreaker was particularly good in Mirrors, since whoever could get theirs down first could exile one of the key Eldrazi lands featured in the deck. Since the banning of the Eye, Worldbreaker has transitioned into Eldrazi Tron decks where, once again, he's at his best in the Mirror, because of the ability to exile key non-basic lands. On top of that, there are plenty of artifacts and enchantments to exile in Modern as well. Worldbreaker also has 2 points in Vintage, where it's played sometimes in Eldrazi aggro. Worldbreaker is going to continue to gain points in Modern for sure, and Vintage isn't out of the question either. I think it will be the number 1 card on this list for quite some time. Well, those are the 10 cards with reach that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If flyers are getting you down, and you want to buy any of these cards, take a look at the description, where you'll find a direct link for every card that made this list. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you stay aware of future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to catch up on old MTG Top 10s, including many more on keyword abilities, you should see the playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.